Okay, we've made one
Yay.
more step here today. Oh my.
Thank you, Randy.
Okay, so if I don't have the owl, which is all set up and ready to go and plugged in and not functioning, well,
The owls, that's working. I mean, they can see us.
okay.
Yeah, hi, everybody.
Oh,
Can you see us?
we want to get the presentation up here. So, so I'll let, does the PDF work?
PDF should be fine.
Okay. All right.
So is the presentation, Ran, is the presentation on the website where we could look at it that way?
It is on the website, but I don't know how to direct you to it. It's in the community
Why isn't
plan
it sharing the screen?
library.
Okay. I think I can find it. I'll
you can
look
find it,
for
then
that
put
and
the
then
link
I
in
can
there.
put it in the chat.
Yeah.
I will
Put the link
try.
in the chat, and I'm gonna try to increase your volume.
Try the remote there.
Okay.
So, and we need to announce as well that this is the recorded version is the record of this meeting for public record requirements. We are not doing minutes because of the complexity of this. And so this is what you say is the record, right? It's not going to be reiterated in minutes.
But it
Sounds good.
we will record. If you have a question and we have a discussion, we'll note that on just a piece of paper here that we will be working with your comments to integrate them into the this part of the community plan. So I'm not sure why the screen isn't showing. Do we understand why Tom's presentation is not on the screen?
Oh, because I need to drag it over there.
Screen share.
Up on the other screen.
Okay.
To get onto the Zoom screen, you go to share screen.
Okay.
Yeah, Tom, I'm not able to get to the that document. I can just get to the community plan.
There we go. We're doing a funny guy, and Tom doesn't work with touchpads, so he's doing a great job. Okay, there we go.
Thank you, Randy.
Yeah. Now
Can you see it?
Nancy?
No, all we can see is the group there. And if someone could put a link in the chat to the document, that would be better. I can't get to it, you're right, Tom.
Actually, what I need to do is share, and then you
Yeah.
can see it.
There we go. Then we can go.
And not that one, but that one. And share. How about that?
Yay.
That's great. Yay.
Wow.
I don't know what it is that I'm allowing, but I want it to happen. Okay. I am not adept with a.
Yeah.
Oh.
So what happens when that goes on? Well, now it disappeared again. So this is just ridiculous. Okay. I'm going to actually start the meeting in the official mode, and then we'll get on with the business at hand today. So welcome to everyone. This is the Saturday, April 5th, 10/11 meeting of the Nescoin Community Plan Steering Committee. Welcome to everyone. We have people there on the screen and people here in the clubhouse. Welcome to all of you. So from the committee members, may I ask for approval of today's agenda?
Approved.
Okay, unanimous approval. Review of previous minutes from 24th meeting. Any changes or acceptance by the committee?
No change, yeah.
Acceptance.
Okay, accepted. Conflict of interest declarations. Any conflict of interest with today's agenda?
No conflict.
No conflict.
No conflicts indicated. So here we go. Tom's going to go through the current state of the Nescoin Community Plan, just so you know where we are going into today's business. Okay.
Okay. Theoretically, there we go. Well, and for those who don't know, I'm been tasked with being the editor of this document that we're working on. Our original schedule, which was predated me, is on the screen there. And since we're that about the middle there, this is actually October. Okay, a couple
We
things.
haven't
We could only
had an
wish.
election yet.
We can only wish.
Okay, so what we have, a few things we didn't take into account when we had the original schedule is the complexity of the changes of Senate Bill 406. That has consumed a lot of our time. We also were distracted for some amount of time by the FEMA regulations. So I think we get a pass on being late because we had lots more put on our plate after we figured out how long it should take us. So apologies are done now. We are where we are. But basically the two things in shaded areas indicate what things we're still working on and very nearly done, we think. Basically revise the recommendations that we're going to have. And I'll have some context for you as to where that's going to go. And then provide recommendations for the specific land use things. Those are the things like the SB 406 that there's some latitude in what the county does in terms of the state law. What we want to do is advocate what options should be taken and what they should look like. You'll learn lots more, I think, in the subsequent presentation. Okay, basically the main document is
Tom, we can't see the document. We're just seeing you guys.
I
I mean, you guys are beautiful, but we can't see that if you're presenting from the.
Huh.
we had you up there in a minute ago, didn't we?
You did. You did.
Okay. I did do a share.
Yeah.
You did. It's just not sharing anymore.
Yeah, the screen went blank, so it may have just kind of reset itself. Come on, get down.
And while you're figuring it out, is it possible to get introductions? Our names are all on the screen, but so we can't see who's else in the room.
Okay, we have in the room, we have Tom Seep, we have Lori Kovacs, we have Kathy Bennett, Dave Bennett, Marge Ogle, Guy Seaver, Matty Boy, Lynn Saxton, and Randall Cook.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
And I will share.
Okay, looks like you did it.
All
Okay,
right.
I'm gonna leave it partial screen because every time we change something, something breaks.
That's working great. Yeah, thank you.
So anyway, basically, there's lots of chapters to this because this is a very complex document. One of the philosophies we had was to take what was in the document, that good information which was there, such as the extended history and a lot of other things that we asked for previously. And we've either reuse those or set them aside into appendices. So, okay. Did I stop sharing again?
It's right underneath. If you click on that white.
If it will.
You stopped sharing again.
Yeah, apparently that is unstable. Ooh, I don't know what I just
It's over
did.
there now.
There you go.
Oh, we have to go down and share it again. This is.
We have to
If somebody could just send a link to the document, we can all watch it. We can all see it.
I don't,
We just have one computer here.
and
Send a link.
Could you go get my
Do
computer?
we need another computer? Yeah, I can go get one.
If you add the link to the chat, we can click on that and get there ourselves.
Right.
We're working on
You're
it.
sharing now, so.
Okay.
yeah. Okay, we had actually moved something, so as long as people don't touch things, I think we'll be okay. Okay.
Thank you.
So anyway, these are the chapters that are in the current version. I expect this to be simplified a bit, but basically we have an executive summary and an introduction. which I'll give you a bit more on the executive summary, which can really give you a flavor of what the document is about. Then I've took the very extensive history and I compacted it to a single page so that we have something in the body of the text, but the original history is intact in the appendices. Then the vision and values, which is really the driver for how we're developing the document. And then our preferred approach to SB 406, which is going to be our recommendations based on this new state law. And then we have a section called Impact of FEMA Regulations. We're probably going to drop that because FEMA is not in any position right now to do anything. I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah.
So we probably will drop that. So we're going to have proposed changes to policies and proposed new ordinances if they're not covered by the zoning. Those, to my understanding, are not very complete yet, but I'm the non-expert in the group. So I don't know what the state of that is, but I'll be very diligent about writing it down once we figure that out. And then directions for the future is things which don't necessarily fall within the purview of the county to do, but things we would like to have happen. Aspirations. And the reason for having that at all is to have a place to write down what we'd like to have that could serve as a basis for maybe applying for a grant or advocating at a state level or a federal level for something else. And we can point back to this, and this is what the community wants, rather than being some individual that comes up and say, we want this. This is a way to write down what the community wants.
Thank you.
Okay.
Tom, can I just ask a quick question of Guy in terms of, is that the county's official position, is that nothing immediate is gonna happen with FEMA?
The county's already taken a position. County commissioners and the planning commission voted to not accept any of the 3 FEMA options or changes in what it would impact Nescoin or any other place in the county, and instead adopted its own position, which simplifies everything that FEMA was trying to do. It simply says that any human development or whatever within a wetland, an established wetland, all you have to do is prove that it has no endangered species impact. It's just a general statement, and then it's good for the county. FEMA rejected that, but the county's standing by its thing. It sued the county along with other counties, and I think other groups have sued FEMA in general about what they were trying to do, and that lawsuit is still active. But as far as Tillamook County goes, right now, we are operating under an option that the county prepared for itself, and it's very simple, and it simply says we won't do anything that impacts endangered species.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so basically that's the outline of the body. Okay. Change, okay, we should get back over to this. And now that should work. Okay, Rand, don't touch anything.
Okay.
Every time Rand touches something, something breaks.
So
But I want you to
magic
feel bad about that.
non-Midas touch.
Okay, so as I said, the appendices are detailed history, disposition of previous policies, policy requests, just for reference, a reference of the state goals, use, and analysis. There's 15 state goals for development. But I don't know what that's called exactly. We probably stopped sharing again, didn't we?
I didn't touch anything, Tom.
You thought about touching it. All right. Am I correct that we have stopped sharing?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay,
should be-
so go back to share. We seem to have an unstable system here, and which is kind of reminiscent of other things. Okay,
Back?
Oh,
okay.
so plug in your Owl's Lab device via USB.
Oh, how handy that is. It's plugged in.
Okay.
Oh, now it's black again.
It's black again.
It
And
might be the internet.
I'm seeing your screen.
which screen?
It's your community plan status. It's your it's your,
Oh,
what do you
that.
call it? Yeah. It's
the
your list of
desktop.
apps. It's your, yeah, thank you. Yes,
Your
it's your
entire
desktop.
Well, unfortunately, let's see.
Is that the wrong one?
That's the most important thing.
Where's Zoom? Oh, it's down here, I guess.
Well, at the bottom.
If you move your cursor down to the bottom of your screen, I believe it will pop up the taskbar.
There you go. That's, keep going down. There you go. And Zoom is to the right. There.
Where is that? Is that Zoom?
Right there. Yeah. You're projecting your screen. Yeah. Oh,
It's a solution.
Well, we tried to mirror our screen, which would have been much easier, but it didn't want to do that.
yeah. It's showing up there on the top that you're mirroring.
Lori's working on that.
Well,
So I think what we should do, Tom, is just go ahead and read through it, and Lori will send the link in the chat.
Right, and we don't need today, this is not the final review of the plan, just to be clear about what we're about to hear. Tom has done yeoman's work in crafting a community plan for the community's review that is articulate, clear, and easy to use. And you will all get it, and hopefully you'll get it today, but we would encourage you to read it. We don't want to read it to you in this meeting. We have other business we should attend to, but it'll be available to all of you. And Tom has done such a great job of organizing the information that I think you'll find it both interesting and clear. And then what we want everyone to do is to send us their comments or their thoughts or their ideas or concerns by email. So we'll keep struggling with the technology here, but it's bumpy, and we've got a lot of stuff we're very interested in hearing from people about that we want to cover.
Okay.
okay, since I can talk to people face to face here, and people will be clueless, clueless is the wrong word. Anyway, at a disadvantage. Now can you, Nancy, can you see it now?
Yes, you've got it up.
Okay,
Looks
it's
great.
really unstable. It wants to
Correct.
be on the laptop rather than on the big screen, so we'll just do that. Okay, so I'll read that out for the benefits of the people here. Basically, this is a summary of the summary. The points that are made there are basically, this is a tool to serve as an advisory tool for the county. This is to reflect what the community of Nesco would like to have the county do and like to have in general. And the purpose of the plan is to help achieve the visions and goals of the community, manage the development and growth of Nesco community, provide recommendations for amendments to the county comprehensive plan and land use ordinance, and address issues related to growth, land use, and development. And the aim of the plan is to protect and preserve the natural environment, maintain the rural character of the community, and ensure that development is consistent with the visions and values, which calls to mind what are our visions and values. Now, we have gone through this before. This is a summary of that. And this is my last slide. So basically, our vision in the document right now is, and I can almost read all of it, protect and preserve the natural environment, maintain the rural character of the community to ensure that development is consistent with the community's visions and values. And the values we have are basically into 4 categories. Community character values, which is to preserve the character of the community. Family focused and education minded, it's a place where individuals and families is a place where they want to live. And that really is going to umbrella off what the SB 406 is. It's about making this place livable with the people here and being able to have additional people being able to enjoy that without having major disruptions of the community. Environmental and stewardship values, I think that's self-evident, and then safety and resilience. And those are some things that we really need to think about. For instance, our firehouse is in not a great place if we have a tsunami. It's right over there, and it'll be underwater if we have a tsunami. So there are things like that. And that's it. That's what I have.
Tom, I think the other thing we just want everyone to be on the same page about is, because there's a lot of discussion about these community plans, it's kind of pie in the sky, and why do they take so long? Why do we have to do them? And we've been doing them in this community for 40 years. And we've been doing them well, and the community has benefited from that. But these are a requirement of state law under the land use planning legal framework for the state of Oregon. And we are an unincorporated community. So for example, when the county wants guidance on Nescoin's request for fill in the blank, whatever it is, a grant or anything, this is their go-to document for what we want. So this is a concrete aspirational document. The zoning laws implement this document. So this is not what the lawyers focus on. This is what policymakers are required to focus on, and the work is important. And in fact, the last two iterations of this plan have helped make Nescoin as lovely as it is today, because we were very upfront about expectations and needs. So I just want, that's the purpose, that's why we're here, that's the use of this tool, and it is a requirement of state law for unincorporated jurisdictions like Nescoin.
So I'd like to add one thing about what Tom said earlier, and how this document may impact other things that Nescoin wants to do. For example, our regional water district recently applied for a grant from the state of Oregon for land acquisition to buy land that was critical to protect our drinking water above where our intake is. We used information that this committee gathered about things that the community felt were important, and protecting our drinking water, I think, was like the second most important thing here. Without our drinking water, we don't have a community. So we used that language in applying for the grant, and about a week or so ago, we got $984,000 from the state.
Oh.
That was, and we used and just as Tom said, I mean, there's things that when we put, Tom and somebody else, we've all mentioned about the fire hall. There's now a bill in the legislature to provide money for rural communities to move fire and police units out of tsunami zones. If we include that, whether it's called an aspiration or whatever you want to call it, and Nescoin applies for something to move that, we will use the language. This is what the community wants. It's tremendous that we were able to use that in the review team that came here about the land acquisition. We were able to use this is what the community wants. It feels that our drinking water is critical to our survival. So that's another aspect of this plan that's important.
And one more thing that you mentioned the other day is that Tillamook County is unique in having input from unincorporated areas. You don't have to have this be a city in order to have a voice.
And this, we're going to talk a bit now about middle housing and the regulations around that and how it impacts Nescoin. Every unincorporated community, actually every incorporated community as well, in Tillamook County will have its own slight version, different version of how this impacts the community. The county recognizes that Nescoin is different than Detar's, it's different than Rockaway, that's whatever, different than the city of Tillamook. So we get to have input into that, and the planning commission will meet and individually approve everybody's plan, as long as it covers the basic stuff that the law requires. We can tweak it, and that's a lot of what our committee's been trying to do here the last 3.5 months.
Okay, so this is a lot of verbiage on these elements of the SB 406. Do we have a simplified version of this?
So I was
The
just
slide
looking at
deck,
that,
right?
Rand. We have so folks on the television or the Zoom, we have handouts that were printed out for us by the county in paper, and you have access to these on the archive and I would encourage you to print them out. Land uses has lots of kind of details and pictures and all that, and you'll find this conversation going forward easier, particularly as we complete the community plan, if you have hard copies to keep track of things, but we're gonna try and put it up and make it
I think
available.
it's
Is
this
it available
here.
now?
Yeah,
Can you access, can they
It should
access?
have been linked on the agenda. My presentation was not done in time for the notice, but that
Okay.
should be linked.
It should be linked to, Tom's saying it to your agenda, so you might wanna look, there are 3 handouts. The one we're gonna start with is the Nesquin multifamily dwellings and cottage clusters development standards. One of the questions before we open that discussion is whether any of you or some of you attended Sarah Absher, the planning director's presentation, which was a week ago?
Yeah, last week.
A week ago, because that presentation, which goes into great detail on middle housing and its impact on Nesquin, is also available electronically, either on the county's website or on the Citizen Advisory Committee. And part of what's impossible to do in the amount of time we have today is to go, Rand, I don't know if you were wanting to go through this whole thing. I think
we'd go with Sarah's slide deck,
yes.
which is this
I
group.
think that's preferable.
Yeah.
But again, just because we're getting, we've been working on this a long time, we're getting to hopefully the submittal stage. This is the time for you to look at these documents, and we're
This is
happy to
where
answer
it
any
is.
questions you
It's
have,
in the
but,
archive. That document is in the archive if they want to find it.
Okay.
okay, perfect. So they can't get.
I'm putting it on the chat.
Oh, great. Thank you, Nancy.
The one thing I would encourage everyone to get a copy of is the map.
And a new map. This is a new map.
We got a new map today from the county of where middle housing can go in Nescoin. We just got it. Ideally, we would have gotten it a year ago. But we got it, and this is the critical piece, because this tells you where your property is and where middle housing could be developed vis-a-vis your property, and how much opportunity there is and where for middle housing to be constructed. So this map is dated today. And this is the most recent county map for this work.
So do you want to look at the map and,
I think we should, if we
Okay.
could put the map, in my best of all worlds, we would look at the map first, because that may simplify the conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe not. We're happy to talk about all of it.
But Fran, is that the new map that you have on there?
I got it from Sarah, yeah. Okay, so again, it doesn't quite fit on here. Slideshow maybe is better. Okay, so this is the map, and the dark areas that are indicated throughout the community are the residential and they're vacant lots. What's H and B? Do you know what H and B is? Residential and H and B vacant zoned R1 through 3. So basically you can see in this South Beach, the core of the village, across the highway, and up into the strip along on Upper Hawk and Nescoin North. The darkened areas are the lots that remain vacant. And so as the new SB 406 middle housing options are available in these areas, and these are the lots that remain to be developed And that's why the map is important, so you can reference which areas in Nesquin could be developed with middle housing, depending on if they fit all the setbacks and all the things that determine whether you can fit one of those.
Every lot is eligible for middle housing.
You
Whether
can
it's
take, you
whether
can
it's
take
empty
down
or
a
not.
house. Okay,
Whether it's empty or not. So I don't think we want to mislead people in saying middle housing and all these regulations only apply to these things that are dark out. These are potential because they're empty,
right.
but anybody can tear down their cottage or house or whatever and build it up as whatever they want.
Middle housing.
Now, I also want to say that this map we just got this morning from the county has not added, and Sarah has more work to do. It has, first of all, it does not have the sewer and water implications on here. It has areas with septic tanks identified as buildable space. It also does not have areas where CC&Rs preclude this development. And so CC&Rs under this state law are not possible for revision, nor can you adopt new CC&Rs to prevent
Middle housing.
middle housing. But this is not, I'll just tell you right now, this is not the final map. Sarah's gonna have more work to do. We'll work with her on those details, but this does give you the clearest view that we have today of where this property, what properties, and your point is well taken. Anyone can bulldoze down their house
Yeah.
if they're in the proper category of property, which involves sewer, water, and CC&Rs, and put middle housing.
Also, this does not include the residential RR zone, right? It says it's only R1 and R3, and residential RR, isn't that the stuff by Kinman's old place that
Well, it's
is?
almost a lot of properties on the east side of 101.
Right.
are
Those
zoned
those seem to be indicated on the map.
Well, that's not what the caption says.
Okay.
See, what the caption's new, I don't know what she's speaking of.
Oh,
I don't know what
Here, I was
HB
looking at
is.
this.
Yeah, no, we need to ask, that's another question, I put it on the list.
Okay. Okay, now,
So, can I just ask, the map that you were showing was the one Sarah presented last week, not the one you got today, right?
Which map? I think it was the one we got today.
I just got that yesterday from Sarah.
Yeah, I think it is the same, because we got the copies from Sarah.
Directly.
Okay,
Do people have questions about the map? Do you want me to go back to the map?
no, that's okay. I was just wondering if it was new because it looked the same as the one we got last week.
There must be,
Rand, when did you get something from Sarah? Yesterday?
yesterday.
Yeah, so that is the update she promised us
Okay,
from the meeting we had
right.
prior to that.
Yeah.
So that's this. Guy, when were you in Tillamook County? Monday, yeah, so we should be on the same page as what's on their visual.
Okay.
But again, I want to underscore, it's not done yet, but it's better
Yeah.
to be known to date.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay, so let's walk through these slides together. And I'd like different members of the committee to take on different areas, especially if you have an interest in that, but you won't be able to see this. Is that correct, Guy?
Go ahead.
Okay, so middle housing code options. If you're not familiar in general what middle housing is, that there's some catching up to do here for you, but middle housing is through SB 406 means that different housing options will exist in R1 and R3 and rural residential. And we're going to go through what those choices are for housing. And basically they're attached and detached plexes, duplex, triplex, quadplex, number of townhouses or cottages, design standards for those, parking standards, and driveway configurations. So the committee's focus has been to understand how these elements will how they work on minimum lot sizes. So the lot sizes in the village vary between 5,000
and 7,500.
and 7,500 feet. So with these different configurations and looking at the setbacks, the 70% lot coverage, we're looking at duplexes, triplex and quadplexes, townhouses, cottage clusters, and minimum design standards for middle housing in general. So the Nesquin residential zoning districts are rural residential, R1 and R3. So they vary in density depending on their R1 or R3. Oh, don't go yet. They already allow for multifamily dwellings revisions for all as outright permitted. Add cottage clusters to outright permitted uses. So we'll discuss cottage clusters so you understand what those look like. And then, so today we're looking at duplexes attached or detached, requirements for triplexes and quadplexes to be attached to each other, establish minimum cottage unit requirements, 3 or 4. We must allow up to 8, and establish clear and objective design standards. And we'll discuss some of those. Oh, now it gets complex here.
No.
So retaining minimum lot size requirements for middle housing in all residential zones. So Nesquin rural residential are 20,000 square foot lots. And most of those are across to the east of the village. Then Nesquin R1 is 7,500 square feet. Remove additional land area per dwelling unit. Sure, I know what that means. Nesquin R3, 5,000 square foot, slope less than 20%. You know, that's if they're on a hillside, and 6,000 square foot on a slope greater than 20%. So it varies depending on if they're on the flats or on a slope. Requires 7,000 square foot minimum lot size for a quadplex, townhomes, and cottage clusters in Nesquin R3. And existing lots less than minimum lot size, only single family and duplex are allowed. Existing lots less than minimum lot size, only single family and duplex are allowed. Smaller lots smaller than the minimum size lot are not eligible for more than 3 units. These are the existing development standards and recommendations. Okay. Maintaining the minimum setbacks established in residential zones. That means we reduce the side yard setbacks to 10 feet. Maintaining the 35-foot building height maximum and height calculation. We must increase 24-foot building height maximum to 25 feet based on those a 2-story. God, this just goes down and down and down.
Yeah,
I just don't know how much everyone can follow about
Well, I
this.
think-
I'm not sure it's as valuable to. read
Yeah,
through
it's just-
it.
Right.
So we took the whole meeting.
Yeah,
One approach would be to ask people if they have concerns about each of these issues.
Right.
And find
Yeah.
out what people's concerns are, and then we can go back and see if we've dealt with that in the minutia that Sarah has been taking us through.
And I think it's really important to remember, just like Guy said, anyone can put this on any lot. You
Any
could take
lot.
your house, bulldoze it, put in 8 cottage units. But remember, this is all done in the framework. This is a framework that does not have funding with it. So what this all does is set development standards for people who would want to do these types of development. It's not like the state is going to build middle housing. It is that if someone wanted to build middle housing, these are the standards that they would have to require. And if you've been listening to Sarah since we began this process at Tillamook County, she's been very clear that Nescoin has standards in place from prior work we've done, like height limitations, that serves us well with this new requirement. And so as you're thinking about what you're concerned about, as you put together the map with the standards, think about, you know, if you're developing, what would you like to develop on your property and how are you going to do it? But also think about next door to you. The committee spent a lot of time trying to preserve the characteristics that make Nescoin special. For example, putting in requirements to have green spaces in these cottage clusters, having them oriented to the street instead of looking like they were built years after the rest of the cottages. Think about if someone took the lot next to you and wanted to put 4 to 8 small houses on it, what are the concerns you would have as a neighbor to maintain your quality of life? And that's the mind game we've been playing for months now, with little bits of it, with more and more information coming from the county. I think we're getting very close to as much information as we're going to have, but that's the framework for your questions and concerns.
Right.
What do you want to be sure we protect? What do you want to be sure we don't have happen? And then we can, as Lori said, we can direct you to what we've already got written down in our draft, and also see what we might need to add.
Also, the other thing besides the cottage clusters, which we have the most ability to give restrictions to, are the townhomes and the quadruplexes that are allowed outright. And there's also a little bit that we can do about setbacks and yards and parking that have to do with those also. And so those will also have impact.
Right.
So do we have any questions from the audience about any of these issues and what's important to you, or if something sounds like it's prompting a question from you?
Frank, I also want to add 2 things. One, this committee is going to meet on Monday, and so if things don't pop up until after you go through these documents, please feel free to attend our meeting on Monday. That's when we're going to go over the feedback and discuss these things. The other thing is that what we hear from the county is that if people want to join 2 lots, then the square, so I think sometimes when we think of square footage, we say, oh, well, the lot next to me is only 5,000 square feet. We've seen examples even recently in Nescoin where people have taken 2 lots, combined them, and used that to expand what it is they're building. So that's always a possibility here with this middle housing. So for me, I spend less time thinking of the minimum lot size because people can combine lots. In the village, what we refer to as the village, the area where we're here with the clubhouse, there's if you think of it as kind of a R1 is the least dense area, which most of the village is. R3 is a zone for high density. We only have 2 streets in the old village here, the old village. Salem and McMinnville are zoned R3, so think of those 2 streets as being able to have more high density housing. South Beach does not have I now believe has an R3. They may have some R2 up there. Most, as Rand said, most of the rural residential, where we think a lot of these potential developments could occur, are east of 101. Nothing can happen in Sahalee because there's 2 HOAs that exist in Sahalee, and they prevent this kind of housing, although they do in one, they allow for townhouses. but that's all controlled by an HOA, so what we're doing here.
And the
doesn't affect-
CCNRs, so
I'm sorry. did I
it's
say
the
HOA?
CCNRs that
CCNRs.
prevent that type of development.
Right. So I think that is, I think Lynn put it really well. Think about this more broadly. What do you want next door? What would you be concerned about? One of the things we talked a lot about was street parking, and how to keep, some of these complexes to be built, and we don't want people to start parking on our streets. Setbacks from the street, the opening, as Rand mentioned, how these clusters or whatever open to the street. We want it to be community friendly. So there's things like that I think that we want you to think about in general.
And I think also, because this is the record of this meeting, we need to be really clear that people who are interested in developing their property for middle housing also need to be coming forward right now. Because this is the time to get their, here's what we need to develop successfully criteria into the plan. This is the time. And I know sometimes there are conflicts between existing and developable and who wants what, et cetera. And so as we share this information and as we continue to have public meetings to wrap this up, we are also saying to the development community, if you're going to take a lot and bulldoze a house or whatever you're doing, this is the time to come forward and say, gosh, what you've proposed here, that 5 foot whatever, is not going to work for us because of X. This is that moment in time. And we need to hear from you if you are planning to develop your property.
Lynn,
Could I ask a question?
sure.
Or whatever, if you want to keep talking that, just at some point, I'd like to ask a question.
Well, Lynn had her hand up previously, so I was gonna ask Lynn what she wanted to say.
So it was my understanding that this is supposed to be affordable housing? Is that right?
No.
No.
Not really.
Oh, okay, because that was brought up at one of the meetings and I didn't see how that was possible in the village. Because a 900 square foot house in the village goes for $800,000 or more.
Right.
So this is not, this is just
This is middle
regular
housing.
housing. Isn't the whole point to bring more affordable housing to the community?
I think
Not encourage developers to come in and build housing development?
so there's like two different tracks, Lynn, in a sense of, there's the general philosophy is that if we increase the number of housing units available, that will, so it's the old supply and demand. If you increase the supply, the same demand, the prices will go down. Who knows? That's one of the philosophies. The other thing that's happening in Tillamook County, through the housing commission in the county, has money for people who want to develop affordable housing. So for instance, the Kingfisher Apartments in Pacific City, if they do an income review and guarantee so many of those apartments go to certain income levels, the county would help support that with the funds. So that's a whole separate thing. You don't, if you don't want that, that's fine. You can build a cottage cluster here with 5 cottages and sell each of them for $800,000. These things could, I think, is it 900 square feet, the minimum?
Yeah. Well,
The one house here in the village, 875 square feet, is the one that sold for 800,000. So if you think if I had 5 of those on a lot,
Yeah.
it starts looking good for developers.
It actually really does open the doors for developers to come in here and even raise houses
Yes.
and
Exactly.
Yeah.
build, 6 units or 8 units.
Right.
And sell them all at a huge profit.
Yeah.
And it does not benefit our community to do that.
But we already have developers coming into the community, taking older homes and adding 10 bedrooms and 8 bathrooms or whatever to make them into boutique hotels in the neighborhood. That's already happening. And I don't think that's what this community really wants.
No, it's not.
So I'm just a little confused.
I think it is, just personal opinion. So this whole initiative and this state law was driven by creating affordable housing.
Right.
This is not a special thing that Tillamook County is doing outside of that framework. This is absolutely within, the governor's current highest priority. That's why this law passed. And so the challenge for us and the conversations we've had, and why we're very appreciative of your time today and your reading time as well of these documents, is two things can be true at once. Cottage clusters can be encouraged for the purpose of making affordable housing for working people working in this community or neighboring communities. The challenge is a developer has to figure out how to make it affordable, how to not have it be $800,000. And there is a lot per house or per cottage.
Right.
And there's a lot of kind of play in here that you have to pay attention to, for example, because we've had a whole conversation when Sarah was on the call about houses that come in on wheels. And could houses come in on wheels? There's lots of ways to make 4 houses each cost less than $800,000, manufactured housing, etc. So I want everyone to have their eyes wide open and understand this is not just for development for $800,000 houses. The intent was actually to get workers' housing built in more places, but we have been working very hard to try and make sure that this rolls out in a way that maintains the community's long-held values. But it's very difficult because two things can be true at once, and this law accommodates both.
I
So-
think we need to clarify that affordable housing is different than middle housing.
Right.
This is a middle housing act. It is not meant to be a low housing cost initiative. It is meant to be middle of the road. Working people should be, people who work here should be able to live here. That's kind of the philosophy. So I think we need to be careful we use the right term. This is middle housing as opposed to affordable housing. Affordable housing, to me, I start thinking about government housing, and that makes me unhappy.
But the challenge is, in the law statewide, which has already been applied statewide, including in Portland, the terms get intermixed, and some people view affordable housing as government subsidized housing. It is not always government subsidized housing, and as Guy just said, Tillamook County has money to support people who are taking middle housing. There isn't a separate zoning law or provision or state law for affordable housing. There is just this law, and both things are possible at the same time. And the county has committed money to making some of it be affordable.
Nancy,
Yes,
I
Thank you.
remember you.
thank you very much. There's also something in the chat from Barry asking if the host can announce who's talking, either in the chat or as somebody talks in the room, if you could just say your name before you say something, that would, at least
Thank
at the
you.
beginning. So that's from
Barry.
That's from Barry. So my questions are, this slide is talking about existing development standards and recommendations, and I probably should be able to understand it, but I assume where you're saying retain, you're saying let's just keep it. You're not suggesting any changes to this first set of bullets, and the same with maintain, the same with maintain the third set of maintains, except we do have to. So the bullets are things to change, and then parking. I see you're kind of doing a mix of what you're thinking of recommending versus retaining. Okay, I got it. I think I have it. So but if I don't have it, let me know. And then I think there was a comment about the HOAs have CC&Rs. I thought Sarah said last week that this will override CC&Rs.
No,
No, the state law is very clear. that
Okay.
They could probably have not passed the law if they had tried to override CC&Rs. That would have been a separate set of legislation.
Sure. Okay, so I must have misunderstood her last week. Okay.
It did say that the law precludes people forming and newly adopting CC&Rs to prevent middle housing being built.
Got it. Okay, thank you. And that was Lynn talking, and I think Tom previously. So.
Lynn Saxon, not Lynn Wintermute. There's two Lynn's here.
Okay, so Lynn Saxon is talking about the CC&R stuff, Barry.
This
Is anyone monitoring the chat, by the way?
This is Matt Gill. I
Can't even
I
find.
think everybody here understands that any of this kind of housing that's built within the village is not going to be middle income housing. It's only gonna be housing for wealthy people. The question is, can we restrict this building to certain areas? Because I think anything east of Highway 101 would be much more likely to be middle housing because it's not within walking distance of the beach. And it's not where everybody wants to be, which is in the village, which is already too crowded with all the STRs.
We've addressed, this is Tom's side, we've addressed that in our discussions. And that whereas you could apply that to the village, it is, we think, unlikely to happen. It is more likely to happen in the places that are marked in the map that are dark.
Yes.
But that's a guess. You know, we can't predict what people will do, but it is likely that'll happen. But this is gonna happen. So what we need to do is we need to make sure that the standards that get adopted are as compatible as we can make them to the existing community.
This, Guy Seaver talking early on in our meetings about middle housing. The question came up is, would we restrict this middle housing application to just certain zones like R3, which is a high density zone, and R, which has more space? And we were told that the law applies to all residential zones. So in Nescoin, unless we have a farm zone or a forest zone, and there actually is some, I think, forest zone across 101, we cannot restrict, we can't choose one zone or the other. So as long as you live in a residential zone, R1, R3, RR, this law applies.
That's right. And
We tried that, which you, because that's our first reaction. Wait a minute, the village gotta rule out R1s. No.
Is there a possibility, Guy, to, in an aspirational way, include in our plan that Nescoin would like any middle housing development to be aided by the county to be workforce housing?
Sure.
I mean, that is something that we could say as a goal, and then, like you said, apply for grants or apply for the county to think of it that way, or give, I don't know, incentives to developers. I can't believe there'd be enough of an incentive to make them change their mind, but maybe.
Well, it could be combined with, first, the county has funds. Some of the intention of those funds is to cover some of the it's structural, like hookup fees and stuff. The regional, our regional water district or our sewer district could waive, if you were building a middle housing and you could do an income restricted thing, they could up to, you know, up to those boards if they wanted to waive those fees. But so there are ways, and yes, you could do it in kind of in an aspirational way. One thing we have to, I think that kind of works in our community's favor here is that this does not change the STR limit, the cap. So that's one thing. Also within our recommendations, or actually what the county is allowing within the middle housing thing, if you have a cottage cluster or a town, a quadplex or whatever, maximum only one of those units can be short-term rentals. So one of the things that if I was a developer and I'm on to build 4 or 5 cottages, I believe this, right, I don't have it in front of me, but only one of those cottages could be short-term rental, and that's only if you could get a license to be a short-term rental. So if I'm building 4 or 5 cottages, then my market changes, which is part of what drives the cost of an 800 square foot place here, is because you can rent it. But if I can't rent it on a short-term basis and only can rent it on a 6-month basis or something, that may also improve the market for affordable housing.
Question for you. With regard to Matt's point, regarding most likely developers come down to the village to develop, they're going to be developing vacation homes. And if you could do a 4-unit cottage cluster and sell each one for $800,000, they're going to be trying to do that for sure. And I understand from our discussion that you can't limit that.
we can limit the short-term rental
Right.
in that cottage
Right,
cluster.
not vacation homes for use by single families. So with my concern about cottage clusters is, say that somebody comes in and decides to build a 4-unit cottage cluster. And under these rules, you need 1 off-site parking space per cottage. And very few of us US American families can get by now with 1 car. We all need 2 cars. So in that example, we're gonna be looking for on-street parking for 4 more cars. If that's next to me, that's gonna deteriorate from my situation.
Yes, that's exactly.
So what role does the fire district play in coming in and saying, hey, Nesco streets are too narrow. We can't have 4 on-site parking spaces on this new cottage cluster. Is the fire district or fire chief able to shut down some of those developments because of fire?
It's a matter of, now this is my understanding, not being Tom's side, not being an expert on it, but there's a layering of permissions that you have to satisfy in order to build. One of those layers is proper access to structures. Now, whether or not parking, I don't know, but I know that the fire department is able to say, you can't build there because that would not be safe. They do have that capability. Whether or not they do parking, I don't know. But there is a layering.
But also,
16 hours or later.
what you've raised is, and Rand, correct me if I'm wrong, or Guy, this is Lance Saxton talking, is if that's a community value, given the compact nature of the village, then one of the possible standards that you could propose, or we could talk with Sarah about, is if you have a cottage cluster and it is for 4 discrete property owners, and particularly given kind of the pricing of what that real estate transaction looks like, does the community want to say, and you can have 4 cars there, period, end of report? Otherwise, they have to park on the highway or something. I mean, I'm exaggerating to make the point, but that's the kind of thing we're wanting to hear from people is, gosh, if I've got 3 cars parked in front of my house all the time now that I didn't have before because they have 8 cars, I don't know anything that says we can't say 4 cottages, 4 cars, all done, all in.
I think we could work that in a lot of different ways too. We could also ask for larger setbacks. We could also ask that they not reduce the setback from the street to 10 feet, but keep it as it is. And the more of those kinds of more restrictive rules we apply, the less likely that's going to happen here. And the more likely it'll happen up on those ones RR 20,000 square foot lots, because you could do that up there. And that's where they ought to be, not here.
One of the things that Dave, in terms of the fire chief signs off on all permits, all developments. And access is one of the things they do, even some building, just a simple, I mean, there's a building permit going on in South Beach now, and the fire chief's been holding it up because of access. Remember, was it a year or so ago when they put the no parking signs on breakers? Because of access, just on breakers alone. And so, yes, the general answer is the fire district has the responsibility to make sure the streets are cleared for access. And they can put no parking up. And that might be something that the committee could put in terms of thinking of keeping roads clear. We've already have a value that our streets should be pedestrian friendly, bicycle friendly, children friendly, which in my mind means that there has to be a lot of space and not having cars maybe on both sides, and then you have cars coming 2 ways on a street like breakers and cars parked on both sides. That's not so pedestrian friendly. So that might be something, Rand, that our committee wants to bring up. I mean, Dave's point about just general access and how these, the density of housing and plus the SDR we already have impact parking, impact street availability. So I think it's a good point. I think it's something we haven't really thought about in terms of what our ability to make a recommendation is on you know, maybe we can do side to side, you know, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you can park on the north side.
How important is a huge issue?
That's a huge issue, you're right, in Portland, and maybe it's becoming an issue here.
So I have a practical comment. I know that the Public Works Department, if you ask them about parking, will tell you, we don't have enough staff to even fix safety problems on our roads. If you have a problem with parking in Neskowin, you figure that out yourself, because we do not have anybody no, we don't have anybody to enforce it. So whatever concepts that we come up with as a community about parking, it's the neighbors that will be encouraging the implementation. I mean, just don't expect the sheriff to come down and tell people that that sign belongs there or not. We just need to
Or
think
even
about
tow
it.
companies to come and tow
Yeah.
cars,
Yeah,
because they
it's-
can help.
It's not that we can't think about it, but we have to think about it in the way, like, how could the community sponsor this? It's kind of like our signs for the speed signs. You know, it's like the county said that they wouldn't do that, and the community figured out how to implement that themselves. If we have an idea about parking, we're gonna need to implement it the same way.
That's exactly the kind of comments we're looking for in this meeting. I made note, I'm keeping a list of things that maybe need to be added. That's what we need to hear today.
One of our constraints, as I understand it, is that there is a model plan for SB 406. And that is a model that we don't have to adhere to exactly. But if we're going to be more restrictive than that model, then we have to justify it as being reasonable and does not unreasonably restrict development of middle housing. In other words, if we can say, well, there's a reason for this, this is different than the model. Our circumstances dictate that actually doesn't work.
So for example, cottage clusters might not work west of 101 because our streets are too narrow.
Well, that's what we'll test with Sarah, is that, again, Tom's exactly right. There's parameters. Because neighborhoods, this is already in place in Portland. Neighborhoods are already building out single-family dwelling lots into clusters. And so, you know, we have to be sure that we are meeting the county's requirements for not precluding it. I think it would be hard to say nothing east of, head west.
That's too onerous under this diagram.
I don't know, we'll ask Sarah, but I think this kind of thing, like, wait a second, 4 900 square foot houses on a lot means 4 cars.
So they need to have 4 off-street parking spaces.
Right.
Yes.
And to do that, that's gonna eliminate a whole lot of these lots in Nesco.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Effectively.
Our house, for
Effectively,
example.
Yeah.
Effectively, a lot of things, because of restrictions of setbacks and parking, it's just not feasible to do.
And driveways in the front, you can't have 4 cars parked in front of your house between you and the street. I mean, there's restrictions on that. But I think Dave's point, the law says we can't use housing codes as a way to restrict middle housing or development code. But I think what Dave raises is that this isn't a housing issue, it's a safety issue on the road. And that may be the restriction, and using the fire district, the safety of pedestrians. We already have statements about pedestrian friendly streets. That may be something, Rand, we bring up to the county as if we could, certainly when it comes to parking and on-street activities, we got to, because of our narrow, the state's term for skinny streets. We have to, we don't have the same streets that other communities have.
So safety as a limitation.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's,
Street
once
safety,
again,
yes.
it's a rationalization for having a more restrictive.
Yes. I think that's a good approach and something at least we can bring up.
Yep, noted,
Yeah.
got it. Keep going, guys. This is good. Great. I don't know, Rand, if it helps to walk people through while everyone's thinking about it, to go through things beyond cottage clusters. Do we want to look at townhouses and these other things to see what ideas they generate?
Up to that point, some of the things that we talked about, cottage clusters, we have single family and duplexes are already in the code. So they're already set. Now, if we were to change those, that's a big deal. However, triplexes, quadruplexes, townhomes are not in code. So we have a lot of latitude. So cottage clusters is sort of the exemplar of the kinds of things that we can make apply to those new categories. Maybe we would like to have them apply to the old categories, but
Yeah, that's that.
those particular uses, for instance, if you look at the slide on, well, it's an old picture, but which slide number is that?
This, there aren't numbers on these sheets, but
Let me get to the cottage cluster group,
it's the first cottage custom.
cottage cluster.
And that's an old slide, old drawing. I did send her an update, but she didn't get it. Anyway, things like the green areas, shields around solid waste, partition, if there's a parking area, a partition between that and the adjoining lot. Those kinds of things are the things that we could do with these higher density organizations of a lot. So the reason we're spending a lot of, I think the reason we're spending a lot of time on cottage clusters is so new, looking at new things that we can do to try to soften the effect of a higher density. That's what I think we're trying to do.
One of the things our committee talked about in terms of this community friendly thing that, you know, a lot of, especially in the village here, many of the cottages, homes have front porches or front entryways. That even if you had a cottage cluster, that let's say some of these designs that you see there, where you may only have two cottages on the street side, that they have kind of whether it's a porch door or whatever it is, that it's not just wall that faces the street, and with the entryway down further. So things like that, you know, the committee's been talking about to make sure that these are community friendly, no solid walls facing the street, porches facing the street, things like that.
Yeah, last week I was in Southern California, and right around 1960 or 59, their philosophy of doing developments changed. It went from an open towards the street to an enclosure. And I could really tell the difference. Yeah, I used to live there 40 years ago, 50 years ago. But the ones that had solid walls, that felt so alienating. It felt like I was intruding. But the neighborhood that I grew up in basically faced out and was open. And that just felt a lot better. So it really came to, you know, I heard you before, Guy, but I felt it last week. I could really feel the difference between having an orient. And I did redraw that cottage cluster such that the two facing the street did have street access, street open.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing we want to do. We want to soften, we want to make sure that we still have an open and inclusive neighborhoods.
Question about parking, that is, if you require one off-street parking place per unit, can you also require no other cars?
No.
Well, I don't know that. I don't know that. I think,
Well, I'm just gonna say that in an offhand manner. I don't know.
see, here's the issue is this is something new here. And there, for example, as it's rolled out in Portland, they have now built huge infill apartment buildings. I think they're only 2 stories, maybe 3 is the height. They're not tall, they're just solid. But they have none parking.
They're doing that in my neighborhood.
Yes, so you know this model. So what happens is, and what we may have an opportunity to not do wrong in Tillamook County, is everyone now is annoyed around the businesses, the small businesses that are close are furious. The neighbors are furious, the traffic is terrible, you know, and so there is there's some revisited thinking about, ooh, this isn't working very well, because people do have cars. A lot of jobs, you have to have a car to get to work. And so I think we need to at least ask Sarah, given that this is 900 square foot housing, which means they shouldn't have 5 cars for 900 square feet, right? Because how many people can you fit in 900 square feet? But we should at least ask her, could we limit the parking that they could have in Northwest Portland, for example, is one of the areas where this has been hardest hit. They have no parking zones. And you can't park there unless you have an owner's permit all day long. You just can't. You can come have dinner there, but even that's hard. And that's legal in Portland to say, no, you can't, we don't have any place to put our cars behind the street. So I think we need to ask Sarah what's
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah, and I know that, that Sarah did talk about having more, sort of indirectly requiring more parking for townhouses. Because there was a required parking and also off-street, access. So there may be something we can do.
So Barry has a question here. I wonder what the capacity of our water and sewage resources are. For example, how people can the water resource support into the future? What is the maximum population will the resource support?
That's one of the criteria when you talk about layers of permissions.
Yeah.
You do have to check, well, Guy would be better.
Well, the water
You have to
district
get permission
just
from-
did a study as to what we can support. We had to submit that to the county and also to the state. So that's been done for the water district. And every development also has to show that you have access to services. And that happens, remember across 101, the old golf course on the east side of 101 here. That was one of the big issues because their intention was hooking up to the sewer system. They were going to have 125 units over there, planned unit development. And there was a big discussion. Anyways, so yeah, the districts, service districts do have studies to show exactly what it is because they're asked often, you know, can you support this?
Well,
It's part of the building permit process is to go
Is
through.
exactly
Yeah,
that.
Sarah said the first two things are the water and sewer district have to weigh in and say, yes, this is serviceable.
I have a practical thing about your 900 square feet and the parking. It's a rural neighborhood. And often those 900 square feet houses will have at least a couple that live there. And I know no couples personally in Nestwin that only own one car. Like even if it's just a couple, there's 2 cars for every building if they live here.
Right.
If they're visiting, maybe 1 car, but often they've got friends coming, so there's 2 or 3, but if they live here, then.
But there are multifamily zoning requirements in place in other areas
Yeah,
that say, that's your problem, figure it out. Because we're saying you get 1 and that's it. And so they do that in condominiums, they do that in townhouses, they do it in lots of areas. I don't know if it's possible in this area, but it's interesting to me because that's been done already.
yeah.
And can we do it here using our safety restraint, our skinny street restraint, our land use, the size of some of these lots, depending on which lot is where. You've got a lot of traffic and particularly if you have a walking community of people trying to get to the Pacific Ocean, that seems like a major barrier.
It would be one more step towards making it more difficult for people to build cottage clusters in the community of Neskowin instead of across the highway where there's plenty of land for all of that.
To be
We
clear,
can ask her.
we're considering all of the areas to be the Neskowin community, not just the village.
We just need to refer to that the village versus the, I mean, it's nice
So
to
we can't
refer to as the
differentiate the
neighborhoods.
village from other
We
areas.
can differentiate by zone.
I mean, you could specify to this outline here.
Rural residential is how you would do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
So this is the area purview,
Yeah.
includes like South Beach.
We could change parking for R1, R3.
yes, we could do
Give
that,
them parking.
yeah.
Well, I'm R1 up there in South Beach. And that doesn't-
Same issues.
Yeah.
South Beach, but
That's absolutely.
you go up on Ocean Ridge and stuff like, where are you gonna park? There's no, it's even almost worse on a hillside like this,
Yeah.
narrow street.
Yeah,
Narrow Street with pickup truck.
Yeah, with construction going on.
But we're gonna ask Sarah to paint that whole picture for us, based on this discussion and you raising this very.
Well, Lori's point earlier about whatever we think of, we have to think of enforcement. And I keep coming up with this image of maybe we can go together with Pacific City and hire, some parking enforcement. A lot of us seniors are looking for other income. We're gonna need it now. The prices are up.
You and I go together on a tow truck.
I can see it now.
Oh,
I can too, it's scary.
Okay.
Let's keep getting ideas, suggestions on townhomes, on, it's
So
the whole
a couple
picture.
of the things that we discussed with the committee are building height, setbacks, building height, setbacks, parking, green space. Those are kind of the four biggest ones, aren't they?
Yeah.
That we have control over or some kind of input about.
One thing we're hoping, remember, we brought up that we could limit, since these are governed by the zones, we all know, all three of these residential zones include other uses. The first use listed in the county for an R1 zone is farm and forest use. So we asked Sarah if we could restrict all middle housing to be just housing. None of the other cottage industries, all the other uses that you find in our residential zones.
Nobody wants a chicken farm next
She
door.
said she's looking into it, and since we already have to go out with a measure 56 notice over this, that would be covered under a measure 56, and it would go to the spirit of middle housing. You can't use these cottage clusters. You can't pull a cottage out and say, I'm gonna run my law office out of this one or something,
Or a food truck.
or a food, whatever it is. So anyways, we'll see what happens with that, but we're trying to restrict this just to housing.
Well, and I think to that point, this page, this is a really well-done document, as is Sarah's. But this discussion, most of the things that we've identified as critical to happen are on this existing development standards and recommendations page. So really look at that and think about the implications, because those are the height requirements, those are, I think the setbacks are in there. Yep, it's got the setbacks. Look through those details, because that's where the rubber hits the road on this.
And is there a limit in the zoning RR of how many people or how many houses you can have in those areas?
Yeah, that's been relaxed.
Up to 16 cottages.
Yeah.
I think
That's
16 is the
probably the
max.
biggest impact. R1 changes relatively little. R3 somewhat, and but RR has changed a lot. I think that's a reasonable.
We could take a
I have a question when
yeah.
there's
Go
time.
ahead, Nancy.
So on the community discussion, which if I could look at that, there's another slide there talking about whether to allow the larger cottage clusters, larger cottages or not. I'm curious what the committee is thinking about regarding that. And if you do allow for larger cottages that would require 2-story, is there anything that could be put in about not blocking an existing view?
Yeah,
Or anything like that, particularly down in the village. But I'm just wondering if you've thought about what you want to recommend for the size of the cottages.
according to Sarah, we have the prototype rules in place for limiting height. We actually have the best in the county for controlling height, so that's already there. So that's not-
Okay,
For 2 stories, we've talked about having anything in a cottage cluster be single story in R1 and R3 and 2-story in rural residential, which would be mostly across the highway, although there are spots in South Beach that are big enough, but we don't, those would be probably case by case, but those could be, what's the limit is 35 feet on a 2-story or maybe it was 24, would have to
24.
change to
We
25
have to, we have to,
25
24
feet.
has to go to 25.
On the beach.
on the beach. So that's the view blocking element of our current
But
height
And
limitations.
17 feet for cottage.
we said cottage
Single
clusters in
story.
R1 and R3 are 1 story and 17 feet. And then RR, because a lot of that property is sloped,
Mhm.
1,200 square feet max, with the idea that 300 feet would be wasted in stairwells and different, whatever you had to do to make it work to be on the slope.
Right.
So there is
okay,
limitations, Nancy.
okay, thank you. So if you did, I wonder if there could be something also added that if you have property that's on a slope already, you might be able to qualify for a 2-story. Even if it's not an RR.
There's silence here.
I'll put it on the list.
I think there is some mention of terrain, but I think it's only R3, but maybe we could expand that to R1 and R2 as well.
So Sarah doesn't have in this packet, I don't know if she has in that packet, there used to be a grid that showed the R1, RR and R3 and the various townhouse, cottage cluster, whatever, hillside. A grid that showed how those interface. And I think we broke that down to create this, but we might want to look at, maybe it's in here. We might want to put it back together again so people can understand easier
Yeah.
the various elements.
The maps are being redone.
Yeah.
The current maps that are available on the Tillamook website are in a state of repair. They're not entirely consistent.
Okay, thank you.
And the maps you're referring to are,
The GIS,
GIS.
tax lot and all that.
so I've got a question regarding that. Okay, so this map is wonderful. It's a great resource, and we're kind of waiting for something like that to come along. So a couple
Amen.
of thoughts for you with regard to this. Is it possible on that county website, the GIS, the GIS, to zoom in on this and
Yes.
see
You
Yes,
who the individual property owner numbers are?
yeah.
In case you want to buy one of these lots to develop it, you can contact the,
You can go into it now, yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
and see who, and it has these designations. on it.
Okay.
Now, as
No,
Tom
no.
said, though, it's under construction.
Under construction.
So I'm not
That
sure.
will be there.
Yeah.
That's what they've got with unfortunately, what they had was they had somebody develop the GIS map and then go away.
Yeah.
So they're having to rebuild it from the bottom up.
It used to work.
So it's
It
not
used to
really-
work. So it's being rebuilt off to the side, leaving the one that's largely accurate. But the one that's being rebuilt is meant to have that as one of the layers.
Yeah,
Because if I'm a developer, I really want to find out who owns these lots.
they have,
Well-
the county has to recreate.
Yeah, so you can't go to the current one.
Yeah.
And sort of do let's look at this, look at that, and figure out who it is. But you can't, it could be done now.
Okay, so.
Given that.
In terms of understanding this, it would really be helpful, I think, if we put the different zones on this, RR,
Yeah.
R1, R3.
Yes, that's an overlay on the GIS map.
Can you do it here?
We can maybe produce a map.
Yeah.
I think, but again, we're trying to wait until the county redoes this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it will be done there, but this map took what, a year to get?
No,
Well, you probably just almost pencil it in. the R1
Well,
zone.
no, there is one on the website now that may not be current, but is close, that has R1, R3 and R.
Right, but for people on, that's
Right,
to help evaluate
right.
this, they get this as a handout, and we're
Right.
helpful to hand it.
Right, but also, again, part of what the committee is not staffed. The county has one person, and it's kind of the standard thing in the land use process is you really want to encourage property owners to go in and when they're asking about a specific property, to go in and ask the county. We don't want to be the point of reference on that. We're volunteers. We don't want to be liable for that. We will go back and try and improve this map, but it's the county who has to do it. And if I were a property owner or a developer, I would go right into the county office
Right.
and say, what do you have on record for my property?
So my point is, I guess, for those of us in this school trying to evaluate this,
Right.
it'd be helpful to know, for
Yes.
example, where these zones are.
We'll do our best, but I'm also saying, I'm gonna be
Okay,
I'm gonna be the loud voice telling everyone in Nescoan, do not count on us.
right.
Go
So-
look out for your own property.
So the current draft, I assume that you have access to the current draft of the community plan. In the back of it, there are some maps,
let's see.
but all of the maps have links to the original source of it. So as it's updated, you'll be able to do that. Go to the back of the document and go to that link.
Okay, so here's my thought for you, just real quickly, sorry. We say that, for example, in the R3 zone, we do allow duplexes, is that right?
Everything that we currently do.
And this also says then that lot sizes for quadplexes, townhomes, and cottage clusters is 7,000 feet. What about triplexes? Do you know what the minimum is for triplexes?
I think we meant to make those consistent.
Okay, okay. So basically, what we're talking about is the R1 zone, where we could put a triplex, quadplex, townhome in the R1 zone. That's really the only zone we have that would accommodate those. But I'd love to know where that R1 zone is, so I can kind of get a sense as to
The
where.
whole village except for Salem and
Oh, it's the whole village.
this village here.
Okay.
Now, up in, there's other areas outside of the road section, South Beach, mostly R1. Up on the ridge, Nescoan Ridge and all that, I think it's pretty much R1 there, some R. But the village here is all R1 except for Salem and Smithville.
Oh, it is, okay. So if we can put quadplexes in the village.
I always tell Cam that he could actually build a putt-putt golf course on his property.
Yeah.
That's
Commercial.
And there currently are, and I made a note to tell Sarah to put the zones on this map when she corrects some of the errors on it. But there currently are, I don't know who has this, there is a triplex in Nescoan already, in the village. There's a triplex, there's at least, I think, 3 duplexes already built in the 40s or 50s.
Well, even more recently, they're on breakers, right between Salem and McMinnville, right there with the old. They have those new, brand new duplexes, or the townhouses.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
They're within our one. That little part of breakers is considered also R3 for high density. And then now we also have commercial in the village. There are commercial zones, not many, 5 or 6 or something like that. But they tend to be the other side of the bridge.
Okay.
A good point, but it is frustrating, and that's why I just don't want the committee to be responsible for individual property owners.
No, I was just
Yeah.
suggesting that, just an overview.
Right.
Yeah.
We can do that.
Just to show you, but you can get, unfortunately, the mobile doesn't show the zones. That doesn't work, but you can see individual properties.
Right.
Each one of those, you can determine what the zone is.
Yeah, this also, you haven't had that.
So Tom and Matt are showing the map on their phones that identifies properties and on the lots.
Sorry.
On it.
That's okay. I can't see the chat or anything here, but it's up there.
Yeah, it's fine, but, it has.
This
Do
should be
you want to
easier.
see if anybody there has any more to?
Right, well,
tax lot numbers.
Does anybody on the Zoom have any additional comments about specific concerns about
I thought it was impossible. to get.
how
I think
these mobile housing is gonna affect Nesquin and what we could do to help solve that issue?
Are we sharing still?
I believe so. Yeah, they're all there. I lost my screen here with the chat on it. So, but according to
Yeah,
that,
Barry is saying too much crosstalk, and I would agree. So there are multiple people talking, but what we're seeing on your screen, Ran, is kind of your whole desktop and
Oh, good.
the,
well, no, it's
and the
not
project
good. I've been,
schedule is up also. So yeah, but yeah, that's good. That's great.
yeah, I
Thank
was
you.
trying to find my Zoom again so I could read the chat and tried to eliminate other things, but it's
So
up on the
I'll
screen.
text you if there's, or if you want me to monitor the chat, I'm happy to.
Well, I can see it now on the screen. I've been looking on my screen on my computer, but it's up on the screen, so I can monitor it. But I think we're kind of winding down here. Lori was just asking if anyone on the Zoom call had any further questions. Since we were engaging in various discussions here, much to your annoyance, we're just trying to find out how many more comments about the subject matter we can get. Try to limit this to 2 hours, and we have 15 minutes left, so I just
Rand,
wanted.
can we give people some direction on what the priority should be for their reading enjoyment? And what the timeline is for getting those thoughts and ideas. We've had some really great ideas today that we have not thought about in our discussions. And
Right.
we're gonna go back and follow up on that. But I think kind of a homework assignment approach here is really critical, including notifying your neighbors and your friends and your colleagues of what's going on and that this is in motion and will wrap up. Because the thing that happened in Portland that made it most difficult when these things went into play is people found their neighbors next door selling their house, bulldozing their house, building intensified housing. And it's a really fractious process if you're not paying attention, which these days, it's very hard to say that this is the only thing people should be paying attention to. There's too much going on. So we really need people to get the word out here, to get the comments back to us, to do the homework, because we need to bring this process and get our plan in place and update it.
Right,
So
so,
specifically, just for my ease of use, if you can look at the values and kind of, if you can classify one of your things as satisfying one of the 4 values, it'll help us to slot that into the right place in the document.
Good point. Good point.
Lori,
Kim has a question or a
Oh.
comment.
oh, it disappeared, kind of comes and goes. Okay, Kim, having an open lot in the village, this is very concerning to my family. Parking and height of middle housing is important to us.
The height restrictions remain in place.
And I don't think this changes any existing homes.
No, there's not.
They have a
I
lot.
mean,
They have a
yeah,
lot.
they have a lot and.
Tear it down, remodel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but
So in the plan, we can show you what's in the plan now for the height. Height is pretty much staying similar to what is currently in the zoning code. So that won't change. Parking is, as we've been discussing, a huge issue. And in kind of not only that comment, but reverting back to my, like, let's be practical, no one's going to enforce this but us as a community. I think if you were to talk to your neighbors in the next week or two, because The county's gonna be deciding this information in May, so we don't have months to talk about this. We have days and weeks to talk about this. And so if you were to talk to your neighbors on your street and say, imagine that that house was gone and that house was gone, and both of those have cottage clusters on them, and we already know how parking goes on our particular street, what would we want to have changed in these rules so that our existing cars have a place to be and these new cars that we expect have a place to be? And how could we incorporate that into the plan so that even if Public Works isn't enforcing it or the sheriff isn't, the neighbors could at least say, this is what the community has agreed should be happening, why aren't you doing it?
And it's really important to note, property is often people's most significant asset.
Yeah,
The enforcement will be by lawyers. Because in Portland, what people did is they're like, okay, the planning department's doing this, I'm just getting a lawyer. I'm lost here. I don't even know what's going on anymore. So that's your most expensive enforcement, but that is the enforcement people use for real estate problems because it is a significant asset for them.
In that regard, I sent Sarah a couple of weeks ago a court case in district court that would cover Washington, Oregon, California. People sued because middle housing was being developed next to them. And the way the suit read was that it was a takings. In other words, you were lowering the value of my property because you were building these townhouses or whatever it was next to my house. And that was rejected, that argument. I hadn't seen that before, but it's to Lynn's point that it becomes legal, and at least the one legal case that has occurred in the Northwest so far, the courts ruled that you can't stop middle housing, even if it affects the value of your home.
But was that the Ninth Circuit?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's likely,
Who knows, right?
Okay, so Barry said he didn't really get a clear answer to his questions. He wants to know how many more homes can be connected to the water system. I mean, I don't know if that's a finite.
Barry, I will send you the study we did. I don't offhand, I can't remember, but it would cover pretty much anything we're talking about here in middle housing. It's not an issue. We have plenty of water. During the issue for us on water is late August, September. And we have, as people who've been around here for at least 10 years know, that we did go through one crisis about 5-6 years ago, something like that, where we were close to a water shortage. We have no snowpack, so we're dependent on rainfall. So that is addressed in and I'll send you the report, Barry, so you can see how we did that. But yeah, the one place that if we had a drought, August, September would be difficult here if we had the same, but there's also the option that we have the authority in the water district to shut things down, so.
and in 1978, Escalon was shut down for insufficient water.
That was before the regional district came into place.
That's how old I am, 1970, but it was shut down, the Pacific Sands, you could shower, but you couldn't drink. I mean, there was a water crisis of a different sort, but you're right, they do have the authority to say.
Right. Shut them down.
Yeah.
And the same is true with regard to the septic system, sanitary system.
Yeah.
We do have capacity, not a lot of capacity. I should know these numbers better, but about 60, at least 60 new hookups, I believe. And that's kind of a moving number because we're making some repairs to the system that limit the inundation from rainwater, which allows more housing units to be hooked up. So it's kind of a moving target. We're getting better all the time, but it's not an infinite number by any means, and it's a relatively small number that we can still hook up without having to expand our plant, which is a hugely costly.
And does that account for STRs also?
Yes.
Okay.
does it account for people who are adding bathrooms? Like when they remodel their houses, they add a bathroom, does that make any difference to the sewer capacity?
Well, it certainly affects the sewer capacity, but in terms of the count, the number of that's available for expansion, it's not included.
And we have to keep in mind that the law, according to the law, Oregon law, I think it's probably every state, if you live within a water or sewer district, the water and sewer district are required to provide these services. It may mean that you have to find another water right or do something to provide it. But requirement is you have to, that was the issue on the old golf course across 101, because they were in the sewer district. And so the sewer district was looking at how do we add 125 hookups. They would have to expand, and to expand, it would cost everybody money to expand the district, a bond or something. So it's not like the sewer district or the water district can say no if you live within the district.
And my understanding is a little different than that. We do have the ability to say no when we don't have the financial resources, or if there's other challenges or roadblocks that make it almost impossible to serve. I got North Hawk, and there's some challenges there that make it impossible.
That may be true, but in terms of the numbers, I think you're required to figure out a way to serve the numbers within your district.
Well,
Unless you have a blockage where you can't have access, like North Nestwood.
but there's also this provision that Sarah made clear in her presentation last week, and she's talked about it several times, and you probably understand it really well. I don't. But that septic, there's also provision under this law to allow some septic provision for middle housing.
Yeah.
Outside of what sewer capacity is. And I don't know how that works, but that's there.
Septics and wells,
Yeah.
in that whole area up there, there's plenty of room up there for that.
Right. And some of the new septic systems would work for a lot.
Yeah, I just know that.
Okay. It's about 6 to 12.
So the homework assignment is,
Read the materials available on the website, which are they vary in density as far as gray area of text and diagrams. There's two documents, Nesquin multifamily dwellings and cottage cluster development standards. And the other piece, which is more diagrammatic and such, and that is the Nesquin CAC Land Use and Plan Review Committee updates. So those are the two, and the map is on there too. So please take the time to go and look at these documents and see what, if you have questions. We're meeting on Monday at 2, and a week from that, again, on the 14th, Monday at 2. And then we will be coming back with another meeting. I don't know if it's going to be Zoom at this point, and too much anxiety on my part. Maybe, but we will be meeting twice as a committee, and you're welcome to join us there with questions, or you can send us questions through the admin email. But we want to get your input, and fresh eyes often see things that we might not see, having looked at this a lot. So we really want your input, and so please read documents and let us know what you think, or if you have a question that pops into your head, just you can, all of our numbers are in the phone book. You can text us a question. Just keep the questions coming so we can respond to these things before we put them into the county. And there's still work to be done and time to be shared, but it's getting close.
So the middle housing issues that we're talking about now, they go before the county in May, before the Nesquin community plan is done. This is like a separate thing that the state has mandated. So first we're sending just the middle housing stuff to the county, and then we're gonna loop back to the bigger picture of the whole plan.
Right.
And the other thing is, these documents, they are not linked to today's meeting. They are linked to the meeting that Sarah presented last week.
Oh, thank you for that.
So go to, and those are in the archive on the Nesquin community or NCAC.
.org.
.org website. If you go to archive and then you go to last week's meeting, these documents show up.
so just so I've been taking notes here, I want to confirm that I have accurate information, because we'll carry this back to Sarah in our Monday meeting is the current map that was handed out today on April 5th at this hybrid meeting did not reflect all CNRs that are in place, which preclude the availability of that property. It does not include sewer and septic, the information of any kind. I don't know what H and B means, and we want clarification on that. If someone knows, speak up now and we'll take that off the punch list. We want to add, to your point, R1 and R3 visually on the map so that people can be clear. So we will do that. And Guy, I think, I'm not sure we've stated anywhere, but we probably need to, that this does not change the STR cap. People are, that's gonna be a question for people. It's gotta be, the wait list is long right now. So we need to be explicit about that somewhere in all this documentation. So anything else that I've missed from today for that work that we're gonna do on Monday?
I think that we will not have access to CCNR overlays.
Oh, we absolutely do. They're required by law to be registered with the county. Yep. You
I'm
can't
not sure that GIS has them.
No, but the county's responsible for, in a project like this, for making it clear. They can draw it on with the felt pen.
Well, drawing on a felt pen is limited usefulness.
But they can do their little computer coloring.
So to speak to the urgency here, the planning commission starts its work on this on April 24th.
Right.
So not that any decisions are going to be made on April 24th, but that's when we're going to start reviewing it and looking at this. Like Lori said, it's probably going to be May when at least the planning commission makes decisions on this. That's we have a couple of hearings.
Oh,
I'd like to speak when you have a moment.
go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I just want to thank you guys. I know this has been frustrating technologically, and appreciate your working on this. And the alternate is to have Zoom only meetings, but not just in person. I just was wondering if you're going to post these documents. I realize we've got the link to the Sarah's documents, but like this presentation and the new map, if you could post that on the event page or in the archive for this meeting. And then I just want to plug, we're having our own, you guys are doing so much work. Our bylaws subcommittee is going to be having its first feedback session on the brand new document of policies, procedures, and references this coming Wednesday night at 7 via Zoom. And you can sign up for that on the events page of the website. It's going to be an overview of the policies and procedures document in general, and which Tom has also been extremely instrumental in. And Michael Beachley is on the chat on the Zoom thing, also a parliamentarian and member of our committee. So we hope you'll join us. We have a lot of meetings coming up, but this is an overview and an opportunity to see what this is all about. It's something that expands on the bylaws in more detail than bylaws. So thank you. And thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, well, it's noon. Thanks, everyone. Oh, Dave?
This is such important work that you all are doing, and it's going to affect generations to come. So thank you very much for the time to me. This is great.
All right, thank you. Well, thanks for coming out, and thanks for everyone on the call today for hanging in there. And we'll try and up our game in the technology range. So, and thanks so much for being here, and hope to see you at another meeting soon. All right.
Share with your neighbors.
Thank you. Yeah, share with.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Rand.
All right, you bet.
Oh, a 16-year-old, take 2 boxes. Now, is the committee still meeting, Rand, to talk about scheduling of completion of work?
Yeah.
Okay,
Unless we just extend this meeting.
okay.
But then we have to leave it.
Monday, we'll talk about our work schedule.
Yeah.
Yes, we will talk about the schedule on Monday, and then we have so I've scheduled the 7th and the 14th for committee meetings, which the public is welcome to, but
Okay, we'll do it then. Good.
all right.
Stop recording.
Yeah.
6 months here that he did. When you know her and know something.
How come the record is not showing?
Of course, yes.
I think if you go down, usually at the bottom of the screen, if you
Yeah,
it'll
no,
bring
I-
up your controls for Zoom,
Yeah,
because you have a Mac, right?
here it is up here. Okay, thank you.
Okay, take care.
Okay, bye-bye.